Thank you. And again, I'm just going to start with just a little bit of housekeeping. For those of you who are with us live here on Zoom, we encourage you to post any questions that you have throughout the webinar right into the Q&A. We'll be first looking at that for any questions that you might have. We'll do our best to answer those as we go. At the end of the session, if we've answered all the Q&A, I'll look to the chat. And of course, if anyone would like to raise their hand to have their mic opened up, you can click the raise your hand button and we will open up your mic, provided we have time for that to allow you to ask any questions verbally. Now, for those of you who are joining us live on Facebook, you can still post your questions into Facebook, and one of my colleagues will be kind enough to make sure those are brought over live into the Zoom, and we'll answer them here live. And of course, if we miss those throughout the webinar, we'll make sure to come back and get those answered on the Facebook post itself. And again, we'll tag Alliya and Eric here on those threads so that they can share their feedback as well. So thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for this highly anticipated webinar. I think we had well over 80 people sign up and register for the Zoom, and many more joining us live on Facebook. So this session is the Financial Freedom Journey, Securing Your Legacy. I'm Andrew Wall, the founder of CPA4IT. As many of you know, we specialize in IT consultants, and our mission is to help our clients organize their finances, create wealth, and transform their wealth into a legacy. And I'm joined today by two amazing guests, Eric Chevrette from IT360 and Alliya Chawla, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, who is from LMS Prolink. And together we're, as I said earlier, sort of the trifecta of the financial professionals that you need in your quiver to make sure that you're organizing your finances, creating wealth, and transforming wealth into a legacy when we talk specifically about the IT consulting world. All three of us specialize and focus specifically in this area. So I'm excited to have this exceptional panel of experts and can't wait to get into what we've booked for today. And so we're going to aim to provide you with some strategic insights, some actionable tips, and some proven methodologies that will actually empower you to take control of your financial destiny. So we're really quite excited. Why don't I start by giving Eric and Alliya an opportunity to introduce yourselves. Eric, if you don't mind, we'll let ladies go first.
Definitely.
So Alliya, maybe if you can introduce yourself and share what motivated you to specialize in this IT field.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be here, especially sitting alongside yourself and Eric. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to really engage with this community. It's an area that is of significant priority here for us here at Prolink. My interest and focus is really in supporting independent contractors alongside staffing and recruitment firms. Having the benefit of engaging with both partners along this continuum allows us to better appreciate what's happening in the industry. Independent contractors can rest assured in our interest in transacting with staffing firms because we have a better appreciation of the waves and cycles along with emerging risks and key trends that are faced by all stakeholders within this ecosystem. This particular area of focus is of the largest vertical for us in Prolink. It's an area that we've dedicated well over a decade in establishing. And it goes back certainly to your father's days working with Joe McCabe, certainly. So there's quite a significant amount of longevity. What we offer here at Prolink is really that personalized touch because we have dedicated staff who are exclusively focused on this industry, meaning we don't look at anything else outside of this. And it ultimately allows us to have a much more significant understanding in terms of what independent contractors need. What are they going through? What are the challenges that they're facing in their environment? What sort of regulations are impacting the way that they do business? And not just in Ontario, but all across Canada. We have the largest significant book of independent contractors as well as staffing firms that go through our channels to purchase and acquire insurance programs that are specifically designed to meet their needs. This isn't an off-the-shelf product that I could use for a real estate company or a mining firm. This is specific to the needs of independent contractors based on claims activities, allegations, and regulatory environments that we find ourselves operating in. So I'm extremely excited to be here to engage with all the attendees and to really answer any questions or concerns in terms of how the product works, what we can do, what are the benefits of it, how it can ultimately maintain their tax status in the eyes of CRA. I'm just happy to be of service in any way I can.
Well, thank you, and beautiful introduction. That's going to be hard to follow, Eric.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think one of the things that many of our viewers may not even realize is how important that relationship is that you have with the staffing agencies and how that benefits the independent contractors. And we'll be sure to get into that as we dive more into exactly how Alliya and LMS Prolink can assist you in organizing your finances, creating wealth, and transforming legacy. But before we jump into that, Eric, I know you joined us last month and we had a great session, but maybe for those who weren't with us live last month, you can reintroduce yourself and share a little bit more about our great relationship.
Yeah, I will do a quick tour. So sorry for the background. Like I was saying before, we are opening IT360 Financial USA, and I am driving to Vermont right now. So remote work, I know you're all familiar with this, so that's wonderful. So when I created the company 15 years ago, a colleague of mine, his brother was an independent contractor, and I didn't know what niche I would go after in the financial services. And we realized that his brother had a limited amount of services that were tailored to independent contractors. So long story short, started small, but we are now 20 people across the country, about to start the US adventure. And what we do is we work in a partnership with Prolink and CPA4IT in providing to independent contractors everything that they need to minimize their taxation, maintain their tax status, and maximize their gain using a proprietary tool that we affectionately call the Neuron tool that we use to benchmark what you're doing today with the optimized version of what you could do tomorrow. In a nutshell, that's pretty much what we do.
Awesome. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm Andrew Wall, managing partner here at CPA4IT. I'm not going to go too much into who we are and what we do, because I think most of you know exactly what we do, and we've shared our mission and our vision already. But the title of today's seminar is The Financial Freedom Journey, Securing Your Legacy. And I think one of the biggest threats to the legacy for most IT professionals, and the greatest risk that we see over and over again attacking this industry, is something called the personal service business risk, or the personal service corporation risk, PSB, PSC, somewhat used interchangeably. And that's the risk where an independent contractor is deemed to be an employee rather than an independent contractor. And as an accountant, you know, when we look at helping you generate income, obviously, if we have an impact on that top line, that ability to earn revenue, that's number one, significant. But also, if we're getting reassessed as an employee and losing the power to deduct many of the benefits that you receive as an independent contractor, like the ability to deduct so many expenses and the ability to pay only 12.2% on the money that's retained in your corporation, that can be really significant. And, you know, I'd love to hear from both our guests today on what strategies they have in place to help secure and protect the independent contractors in the event or from the danger of being deemed a personal service business. And maybe Alliya, we'll start with yourselves, because I'm a big fan of the products that you have, and I think that it's one of the most powerful tools for protecting against the classification of personal service business, because many people may or may not be aware that there is some tests that court will go through to determine if you're a personal service business. And one of the first ones that's been around since the Weeby Door case that goes back to the 1980s, which was sort of one of the landmark precedent-setting cases, was the risk for profit or loss. And by my definition, you're only insuring if there is a risk. And so for that, I think that having errors and omission and liability goes a long way. But I'd love to hear your perspective on the importance of the programs that you have in place, how those benefit the independent contractors, and how that amazing relationship that you have with staffing agencies helps to provide these amazing benefits at some really great rates.
Great. That was an excellent synopsis, really, and laying down the foundation work, Andrew. You know, there's so many benefits in terms of having ICs have their own dedicated insurance program, right? As you mentioned, it really helps solidify allowing ICs to maintain their tax status. Unfortunately, the list of qualifiers that really makes that line ambiguous, whether they're an employee or whether they're an independent contractors, is continuing to grow. There are now 10 different points, and one of which you mentioned, whether they have the ability to be impacted from a profit and loss standpoint, but there's about 7 or 8 in addition to that, that really adds a gray line in the eyes of the CRA to distinguish whether or not they're an employee or whether or not they truly are self-employed independent contractors. Our insurance products really solidifies the fact that they are independent, that they are liable for risk in the operation of fulfilling their contractual obligations to their clients, and helps prove in the eyes of the CRA that we are truly independent and we've taken measures to protect our personal assets by procuring our very own insurance product. The difference in terms of this dedicated personalized program is that through Prolink, you get a dedicated team of staff who are exclusively focused in understanding what the clients are looking for. By engaging with our staffing firms, we have an open channel of communication in terms of what are they seeing from their clients when they're looking to place ICs in these contractual work placement opportunities. What we're seeing in the environment is heightened regulation and expectations to ensure not only that staffing firms have the appropriate insurance, but that ICs are mandated in terms of having their required insurance. You mentioned misclassification risk. This particular risk exposure is costing staffing firms and clients thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to defend. What happens in these situations in the time of this ambiguity, everyone and anyone can be named in this ongoing litigation. And whether or not any of these different stakeholders, whether it's the client, whether it's the staffing firm, or whether the independent contractor are actually guilty of said allegations, it's irrelevant because you still need to spend money in defending these claims. So one of the biggest facets in terms of our insurance program is the fact that defense costs are included in the insurance program and limit. So if I can just switch gears a little bit and tell you a little bit about what our coverage entails, it's really centered around 2 main products, being professional liability insurance, also known as errors and omissions insurance. And this essentially will respond to any lawsuits alleging the professional services provided by an independent contractor were inadequate, or the individual may have been negligent in the provision of those services. Those errors or any sort of wrongdoing really protects the IC against any mistakes which will cause financial loss to any third party, a third party meaning their client, their client's customers, and so on and so forth. The other product that is also included in this program is called commercial general liability insurance. This covers ICs for any third party injuries, bodily injury, that is, as well as property damage resulting from their activities. It also provides protection for when clients visit the property. It provides protection against libel and slander or any sort of false advertising and so much more. So together, these two products really protect the most significant risk an independent contractor will face in their engagement with their clients as well as staffing firms.
There's a point also, sorry, Andrew.
No, go ahead, Eric.
That I really face a lot of time across the country with my team is, and IC will say, oh, I don't need it because the staffing agency has one to protect me. Can you talk a little bit about it? Because in CRA guidelines, it's very clear, and we share with our clients the CRA guidelines because for some people it's like news flash, but if it's written on the website, when a staffing agency offer not the E&O, but they say, no, you don't need it. You know, I mean, sometimes a recruiter just by miscommunication or misinformation will say something like that. Can you expand a little bit on this, you know, where doesn't cover really the IC? They need their own.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, as an independent contractor working through your staffing firm, independent contractors are by definition independent and thus responsible for their actions. Were it otherwise, you know, you would be considered an employee. Now, many staffing firms, you know, have a certain extension in their insurance program that also extends to independent contractors. And don't get me wrong, that's always a nice to have, right? Ultimately, if you can seek coverage through one of your partners, that's amazing. But don't forget, the ultimate benefactor of a staffing firm's insurance policy is the staffing firm. So ultimately, in the case of any litigation that may arise where the staffing firm's named, the independent contractor is named, the independent contractor will only see benefit of that program with whatever's left on the table once the staffing firm absorbs of that limit what they need to defend themselves. And that's never a good feeling if that is your only option of insurance. It's always recommended and in anyone's best interest as an independent contractor to have your very own dedicated insurance policy that's not shared with any other entity or individual or company. It's always something to bear in mind.
And that really is, you know, hammered home by the point of around the PSB, PSC issue, because it's got to be your insurance to prove that you're insuring against your risk, not the staffing agency's risk, number one. But what was really interesting, and I want to make sure I understood this correctly, but it sounded almost like you were saying if these people are assessed as a PSB, PSC, would there be some coverage for the potential legal costs if they did have to challenge this in tax court? I'm not sure if I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sort of sounded like that could be the case.
So are you asking if, as an independent contractor, if there would be coverage for them under the staffing firm policy?
No, like, so if they had this policy with yourselves, where they had their own errors and omissions and liability,
Yeah.
and they were deemed by CRA to be a employee, or at least not deemed, but assessed as an employee, and they had to challenge that in tax court, would there be any protection or help and assistance with the legal costs associated with that?
Not so much legal costs, but the documentation itself verifying that, you know,
Right.
you have this insurance in place. It refers that independent contractor, whether they're a sole proprietor or individual. And that in itself, having that dedicated policy and their certificates and all the documentation will show that they're a standalone, self-employed individual or corporation. And that's entirely independent of being part of another firm or staffing company.
Yeah, I see that point, and I've known that for years. I thought I would, maybe for half a second, I was like, oh, well, does that mean because you'd mentioned about litigation, which, you know, could come from any number of places from clients that would impact their ability to earn income. And I would think, well, hey, litigation with CRA, I wonder if that would fall under that umbrella, but I guess maybe not. Hopefully you never have to find out, because the sheer fact of having the insurance is going to be one of those big layers of protection. And when it comes to personal service business risk, it is about having multiple layers of protection, because every court case has always said we're going to judge every single case on its own individual merits. There's actually, I apologize, there is one get out of free jail card when it comes to personal service businesses, which is if you have more than 5 employees, 5 full-time employees, you're not a personal service business, which, by the way, was put into place because of a case with a Toronto Argonaut who the CRA went after, who had his wife, himself, and his 2 kids as employees. And so, surprise, surprise, 5 was the magic number because he had 4. And that's just the way CRA plays, unfortunately, sometimes. But there's other ways of adding protection. And I know, Eric, when it comes to financial planning and how you, store the wealth that you've generated inside of your business or outside of your business, can have a big play on how you can protect those assets. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about some of the strategies you guys have in place as financial planners to help shelter and protect these assets that they've generated inside their businesses?
But one of the first thing is also on the CRA guidelines, and we always say when clients want to know about the tax minimization strategies and all these things, it's wonderful. This is the fuel of our practice. But a lot of time I talk about the biggest money machine that you have is your capacity to earn an income and to be and have a contract. But if you are unhealthy or sick or have an accident, this is why CRA also recommend that they own their own disability coverage or salary replacement insurance. So if you had a machine that prints $200,000 a year, you would probably insure that machine, but this is what your money machine is, your capacity to earn an income as an independent contractor. CRA views it the same way also, and they say if you have your own disability coverage, this is another feather on your hat. So we will see you a little bit more as a real independent contractors and not an employee with a jacket, that is misclassified.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I guess, and some of the other tools you have are like the IPP plans as well, which have another form of protection, right? Because they're creditor proof, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I can talk probably for 45 minutes, on or hours on this subject, but I will be as brief as possible. And if you need more info, Andrew, or someone ask a question, I can be as detailed as possible. Okay. So basically, I will take 5 minutes, okay, or 2 minutes. I will go very quick, and then people decide if they want to know a little bit more about certain things. So the money that stays in the corp is not that great in the long run, because we will one day or another hit the new Morneau threshold of passive income. And we work on strategies to remove as much money from the corporation as we can using other strategy. Even if we keep money in the corp, we do keep money in the corp, but we play or work with other strategies, either using insurance product that are designed for incorporated people that will minimize or eliminate tax on the transfer of wealth. And we created also, following CRA guideline on employers' pension plan, an executive pension plan, which the corporation of every IC can create a pension plan as a deduction for their company which will be out of the company, grow outside to their personal name, just like an RSP, but with a lot more benefits, that we can discuss in further detail down the road, but it's CRA approved because it's an employer's pension plan and it's registered at CRA level. So every IC has a plan created by his corporation to his own name, registered at the CRA level. Okay.
Absolutely. And on that note, you said if people have questions, you'll dive a little deeper. We have our first question from the audience that's come in. The question says, I often hear clients say that they feel they're okay with not being a PSB because they have 2 or more clients or contracts. Can this alone be correct? And I would say, from my perspective, and again, caveat here, I'm not a lawyer, I'm an accountant, but we've been dealing with this issue since the 1980s, over 4 decades now. And I can say that in and of itself is not sufficient defense. And that in and of itself is also not sufficient reason, if you only had 1 client, for CRA to deem you to be a personal service business. There's a much greater set of tests that go along with the determination factor for whether you are an independent contractor versus an employee. And we have countless cases where people have had only 1 client for decades and have successfully fought and defended their status as an independent contractor. But on the flip side of that, just because you have 2 and clients or 2 contracts doesn't mean that you are acting with those contracts or with those clients as an independent contractor. And that's my perspective. I don't know, Alliya or Eric, if you have different perspectives on that, but
it's a plus, definitely CRA. It's always a gray zone, so
Yeah.
we try to be in the darker gray. So they ask a lot of questions to do their test. Is it a plus if an IC have more than 1 contract? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's not sufficient. Okay,
Yeah.
like you said, if the guy goes to a Christmas party, he has a parking lot paid by the company, there's so many other things that we have to evaluate. But if we just want to answer the question, if I have more than 1 or 2 or 3 clients, is it better? Yes, it's better, definitely.
Yeah, but not definitive. It's better, but not definitive.
No,
right?
no,
Yeah.
no.
One of the other questions that we've had that's come through, and this might be again for you, Eric, is how do you balance the immediate financial needs versus the sort of long-term legacy planning?
Basically, if we all had a crystal ball, and by the way, we don't, it would be so easy to do our job. Okay.
Yeah.
But we don't. So what we need to do is it's risk mitigation with how much money we may need in the short or mid-term, and that money cannot be in longer term strategy. Okay, so if we know in advance with our data gathering with the clients that he wants to buy a cottage, or he's nervous because in the past he had between contracts of 2-3 months, regularly, but definitely we need to work with the client with some safety net. So the amount of money that will remain in what we call accessible money or liquid money, it doesn't mean it's not invested, but it means it's accessible in 24 hours. Definitely, when you want liquidity, the rate of return and the tax minimization is less. When you work with strategy that are longer term and have bells and whistles embedded in them, you are more efficient tax-wise, but you sacrifice the liquidity aspect of the money. So it's every case is different. In a chat with our team to know what's coming.
Yeah.
And because we don't have a crystal ball, we try to be a little bit more conservative than we need to, just to make sure that things are working properly.
Yeah, what I often find from my personal one-on-one experience, with my clients is when we do go through the financial freedom planning exercises and look at their net worth, they're often in much better situations than they actually realized they were.
Yeah.
And I think obviously, you know, with what we've gone through over the last few years with COVID, people's perspectives on life are changing. Yes, they want to make sure that they're building a legacy and that they have protection for the future, but they also want to live in the now and enjoy life. And that's an important balance. And I think one of the things to note is that with the combination of all three of our partnerships, we really provide the tools to help you to be able to generate the income, maximize the income that you can earn, and minimize the amount of taxes that you pay, so that you can take money out now, as well as plan for the future by putting together the right tools. Because when we're proactive, when it comes to financial freedom planning, we can do a lot more in mitigating taxes. And obviously, I you know, speak from a very biased perspective, as taxes being one really important factor for helping you achieve that financial freedom and that lasting legacy. But I guess one of the important questions that, you know, I'd be curious just to hear from each of you what your perspective is like, how do you define, you know, financial freedom, and how does that differ from being wealthy? And Alliya, I'd just be curious, what's your perspective on that? And you know, I'd love to hear from both of you, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question, Andrew. I mean, to me, in my opinion, is as an independent contractor, financial freedom to me is being able to selectively pick what gigs and opportunities you have available to you, right?
Mhm.
And to me, that translates in making sure that you are the most attractive, most valuable option on the table. As we see, you know, regulation really impacting this particular industry that's increasing, certainly being faced and hit by staffing firms today. It's only a matter of time when, you know, independent contractors are going to be requested to have dedicated insurance in place in light of the increasing claims activity faced by staffing firms and clients alike in defending misclassification allegations. It's optional right now for independent contractors, as we know, in many instances, whether or not they want to have dedicated insurance products available for themselves. And the risk is theirs if they don't. As more time progresses, I'm seeing this become more of a requirement. You know, while we have the benefit of engaging with staffing firms who continuously share the challenges they face in advocating for their ICs to get their independent contractor dedicated insurance program, you know, it's a balancing act because they are cautious not to be coming out with a heavy arm and the leader in this industry, because they lose their competitive advantage.
Mhm.
But one of the benefits that we also have is connecting with clients, right? You know, unfortunately or fortunately, many clients are direct sourcing and circumventing staffing firms altogether. This particular stakeholder is very much on the lines of the independent contractors should carry their own insurance. It has to be separate and independent from the client's insurance program. And they're not as fearful as staffing companies to come out to mandate these types of requests. So I think in time, I will not be surprised at all that this becomes more of a prerequisite in order to get contracts,
Mhm.
in order to get work placements. And this all goes back to, does an independent contractor want to get any and every job that they're interested in to either take it or turn it down? That flexibility is money in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
And I mean, and again, the reason we're talking so much about this PSP, PSC stuff, again, so many of you might know that, you know, in January, actually probably December of the previous year, CRA announced that they were going to do a special project, again, looking into personal service business risk. I have been saying for many months, well, I haven't seen anything roll across my desk yet. So far, so good. Fingers crossed. Maybe they've been distracted by SEBA or some other issues. Well, I had my first case roll across my desk earlier this month. And well, I guess last month. Thankfully, it was one of our clients and we were able to successfully defend it, but it was a post-review assessment and he was being looked at as to whether his independent contractors were truly independent. So it's, it's hopefully just a one-off, and we can assume that, or we can hope that maybe they aren't going to be reinitiating this massive project, but we're in the time frame now where, based on how their projects and how long they go, we're likely to start seeing more of these come across our desk.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean that you have to be afraid to be an independent contractor. But what it does mean is that you want to make sure you've got the right tools in place to help you generate wealth and a legacy and be that ideal independent contractor so you can get those contracts, but also shelter and protect your assets using the right tools so that, God forbid, anything were to happen, you're positioned, well above the average. So imagine the analogy I often use is a personal service business attack is much like a shark attack. It's violent and devastating and life altering for those that are impacted by it. But it affects only a very small percentage of the population. Less than 1% of the population are ever challenged on the personal service business. Well, actually on an audit in general, let alone a personal service business audit. But that being said, if you're going to be diving into shark-infested waters off the coast of South Africa, you want to be in a shark cage with all the shark repellent and protection that you can get. And it's the same thing when it comes to personal service business. You don't need to be afraid to dive into the water, but you do want to make sure that you've got the right tools in place to help you and to enable you to create, to generate and protect that legacy. And there are substantial benefits to being an independent contractor, and amazing tools to help you to generate that legacy. But again, Eric, I'd love to hear from you how you define the difference between financial freedom versus just being wealthy.
But to add a little bit, to the tax status, and I will jump into this very quickly. What we do when we meet an independent contractor, even if we're very excited about promoting the strategies, we really spend the time with them to make sure that their tax status is maintained.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not sexy, it's not a fun discussion, but through the grapevine, and I have a very powerful grapevine, there's 40 new auditors at CRA just for independent contractors. So I don't want to be alarmist, but you may see more cases. The goal is we cannot prevent an audit, but we can minimize the side effect of a very troublesome audit. And this is what we do at the beginning. To jump to your other question about financial freedom, it's a very, very wide question. Some people want to travel the world at retirement. Some other people, they want a normal life or more standard life. What I realize is that, and again, it's with 15 years of experience, a little bit older than both of you. A lot of people think that they're going to do things at retirement differently. But I can tell you by experience that if you didn't do it during your lifetime, you're probably not going to do it at retirement. So everybody that told me that never traveled, that they want to travel at retirement, they didn't. People, I don't play golf, but I want to play golf at retirement, they don't play golf. So usually they will have the retirement that will be similar to their working life. And what we like to do is the independent contractor crowd. They're all pretty well educated, and works with facts and things like that. So we add over the years to create that tool that I spoke to you many, many, many times, the Neuron tool that Danny and his team put together, where basically if we put into the system what you've been doing so far, and we modelize this to a retirement age with a retirement objective of a budget, and we compare it to the optimized scenario, we see in a lot of cases a huge difference between doing what you're doing today, which is okay, at least you're saving money, but is there a better way where I can grow my wealth more efficiently? And instead of a lot of talking, the modelization is pretty powerful. So you have the standard scenario, which is their scenario today of what they do, compared to the optimized scenario with some tweaking. Did you know if you do this, if you do that, if you do this, and we have the machine spit out the new result? Sometimes it's a little bit shocking for certain clients, but they like the aspect of comparing the before and the after. But it's a tough question, Andrew, you know, how we describe or how we define wealth. Basically, what we can say to a client is, at least with us, they will either retire sooner or retire richer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to err on Alliya's definition of it's the ability to pick and choose the contracts you want to work on.
Yeah.
And being financially secure means that you have sufficient income to maintain your lifestyle as it exists today, at least from my perspective, and know that you've got that as an annuity. So you've got a net worth that's going to generate that income for you, you know, in perpetuity, and that you've got a legacy to transform or pass on to whatever's important to you, whether that be your children, or if they're terrible kids, to an important cause, whatever the case might be. But I guess the big question is, you know, what are the challenges that people face, and what are the key elements to consider when aiming to build, you know, a financial legacy? And so from, you know, I'll start with maybe from the accounting perspective. And what I often see is, all too often I see people who are reactive when it comes to their finances rather than proactive. They come to me at the end of the year and they give me the bank statements for the last 12 months so that I can compare taxes, and that's about it. Not enough people are proactively putting together budgets and plans and strategies. And it's not to say nobody is doing that. This is a big generalization. There are people out there who are very proactive, very organized. But I'd say, you know, one of the most important steps that I could encourage people to do is, instead of looking back in the rearview mirror at what's happened over the last 12 months, start looking forward as what you want to do in the next 12, 24, 36 months, and start planning for that. Because the more that you can plan and set budgets and stuff like that, what I find is the better off financially most of those clients who do that proactive planning tend to be. Because it's all too easy when you're reactionary for money to go here or to go there, and not really know what you spent it on, and not even appreciate what you spent it on, because you haven't even been sort of planning and, you know, getting excited for these goals and these objectives that you want to achieve. But, you know, I'd love to hear from either of you as to what other steps people should consider when aiming to build a financial legacy.
You want to go, Alliya, or you want me to go?
You know, maybe I can go just to speak to Andrew's initial question around,
Yep.
you know, some of the challenges I think many independent contractors face. And I hear this all the time. You know, I live and breathe in the insurance industry. It's where I cut my teeth professionally, been working in it for, you know, almost 20 years. But what I will say is, for those that aren't in it day in and day out, it's a beast. It's a different language. It's a different animal altogether. Unfortunately, it's a cost of doing business. No one wants to do it, you know, with any type of insurance, whether it's home or auto insurance, but we all know we need to do it. So, you know, there's so many competing options out there, but nothing really stands against, you know, a dedicated company that has the geographic breadth and reach, as does Prolink. So what I will say is that it's vital for an independent contractor to align themselves with a partner that is ingratiated in the business, that really appreciates what their needs and challenges are. You know, we have a seamless product, something that's flexible as far as timing. You know, it can be up to a week, depending on your contract timeline, or up to 18 months. It's cost effective, again, because we service the largest population of independent contractors, which allows us to garner the most competitive and economic rates available in the entire country. And then of course it's something that can be easily accessible within minutes, right? You fill out an application and within a few minutes you have the documentation in hand to share with your staffing company and client, and you can move on ultimately in focusing on more important things like doing your jobs. So I find that is the biggest sort of feature when you align yourself with a partner that truly understands what you need and has an accessible product that's made just for you.
Mm-hmm. And I guess one of the things I alluded to earlier was that relationship that you guys have with staffing agencies brings some substantial benefits. And my understanding, and hopefully you can correct me if things have changed, but in order to get the amazing rates that you guys have, because I think it's, it's less than $30 a month or something like that, isn't it, for the plan?
Yeah, I mean, it varies depending on the type of role that you're in, whether you're an engineer or an IT consultant or management consultant. And then, of course, it's at your discretion what limit you buy, whether it's 1 million, 2 million, or 5 million. And of course, the duration of the policy. It's all flexible. It all depends on what you're looking for. But yeah, starting costs are as low as $27 a month.
Yeah.
And, I can't mention costs without also mentioning that it's tax deductible.
Yes. That's my favorite benefit for sure.
Right.
But
it's a win-win with no downside.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
do they still have to be contracting through one of the agencies that you're associated with in order to get that benefit? Or I believe there's also the option to go through the APCC. Is that still correct?
Yes, that's right. So if their independent contractor is working on one project with one staffing firm, our independent contractor program is perfect. They would have to be an affiliate staffing firm, so an approved staffing firm on our list. But I come across situations, especially given where the economy was going, new entrants to staffing firms. So it takes minutes, literally, for us to engage with a staffing firm and put them on our list. So
Right.
Any new entrants will have their independent contractors have access to our product. Now, for those independent contractors, Andrew, that have multiple projects, multiple staffing firms that they engage with, there is an alternative solution through APCC where they can get their insurance needs met. Now, because of their more complicated sort of work arrangements with multiple projects, multiple staffing firms, the price point is different, but it just allows us to better meet whatever their needs are, depending on the projects that they're taking on.
Okay.
Excellent. Now, one other thing I should mention is we are closing up near the end of our time with you guys today. So I want to encourage everyone, if you do have questions that haven't been answered or you want us to pinpoint in on any specifics, please feel free to post those in the Q&A and we'll be making sure to answer those.
Do you want me, Andrew, to maybe answer the question, or you have question on the chat?
We'll let you answer that question as well. We do have one other question here on the chat.
Yeah, go ahead with the. Okay, so what's difficult is everybody has a somebody. So all our clients, they already have someone when they meet with us, and the difficulty is the advice that they receive. Is it good advice? Does it address to the right crowd? And this is the biggest problem that we face. There's a lot of paradigms in that industry. I mention all the time that the percentage of the population that is independent contractors or incorporated is very small. So the vast majority of people doing our job, they are pro at T4 employees and financial planning for these guys. But when you apply the same recipe to a person or a family that one member as a corporation, it's not, and it's very far from optimal. And this is the biggest difficulty. People receive advice, but the advice that they receive is usually regular and standard advice known in the banking system and in the advisory crowd, you know, for T4 employees. And this is our biggest challenge. So the best way we found to solve this issue, you know, is really all advice are good, but would you prefer the best advice that brings value down the road? And the only way to prove that to people is today, this is the modelization down the road, and this is with some tweaks what it will look like down the road. But so many people, oh, Eric, I'm good, I have someone. Yeah. Everybody has someone. But the someone that you have, I'm not saying that the someone is no good, but is the someone deals day in and day out with incorporated people, or he has 2 or 3 like you and 2,000 T4 employees? We see it right away when we ask the question, and this is our biggest challenge, you know.
Yeah, I see that time and time again, and you know, especially around this PSB issue, obviously. So the other question that we've had come through on the chat are, what are some resources or tools that you would recommend for someone just starting their financial planning journey as an IT consultant? And maybe I'll start with a couple just from like the accounting and finance perspective. So there's a couple of great tools out there that are free, like Mint, for doing some personal budgeting. Obviously, you know, you're working with an accountant, you're going to be doing financial budgeting for your corporation, but there's a whole other aspect outside of the corporation that you need to look at and analyze. And Mint is a great tool for doing that. You Need a Budget, YNAB, is a budgeting tool that sort of has a unique approach to help you sort of prioritize your spending, which is a great and interesting tool. Obviously, the accounting tools for your business, like QuickBooks Online, which we're big advocates for, and the other tools to make that process as easy as possible. You know, obviously the resources within ourselves, with us handling the accounting and tax, and Eric, his team with the financial freedom and financial planning, and Alliya with the insurance and protection there. Books, The Millionaire Next Door, websites. There's so many courses online. I'm not even going to get into what you can find on there. But so there's lots of resources out there. Eric, I don't know if you have any other tips, tools, or suggestions for the independent contractors?
But in the near future, you know, the book, the wealth algorithm that we wrote is coming out soon, you know, and on the ebook version, we will have links where people can do their own calculation. So I think we're working on 4 or 5 different links where people will be able to input some data and have an idea of what it could look like compared to what they do today. So it's not going to be the pro version, but at least in the comfort of their office, you know, they will be to use these links. So when it's available, Andrew, you'll be one of the first to know about it.
Absolutely, and that'll be a great tool. Any other thoughts from you, Alliya?
Yeah, you know, our website houses a lot of information for independent contractors in terms of the different options available to them. You know, the sort of claims that we generally see independent contractors most often faced with. And then, of course, I would always point them in the direction of the CRA, just to, you know, take a look at that growing list of ambiguity created in terms of overlapping scenarios where an individual may be considered an employee and may also be considered an IC for that same factor, just to give a better appreciation of just how challenging it may be, you know, for the CRA to make that distinction. And the more an IC has in their pocket to justify, you know, that they are truly self-employed, it's always just in their best interests.
Absolutely. And now I'm going to also sort of turn this around and ask, one question to our audience, and I'd love to hear from you guys. What you'd like to see us dive deeper on from any of the session that you found interesting. Obviously, today's a broad discussion about securing your legacy. But if there's any areas that you guys would like us to dive deeper on, any of the specific financial freedom products, whether it's, the insurance tools, whether it's the, and then that could be liability or whole life or IPP plans or, tax, holding companies, anything you'd like to know more about, I'd love it if you guys could share those, that feedback
Topics.
in the chat. Yeah, so we'd love to know from you guys what we can do to make sure that we're continuing to develop and bring you guys content that's helpful to help you guys organize your finances, create wealth, and transform wealth into a legacy. Because as I forgot to mention, we obviously have a website ourselves full of blogs. You can find us on all the social media platforms. We're doing our best to do lots of content. We are in the process of one more time revamping our newsletter. Just had a session today. I think you guys are going to be really excited with this month's newsletter. We've got a new teammate who's working on making that even better for you guys. But we need to hear back from you guys. So I need to ask you guys what we can do to provide you better content. And we do have just, I guess, one more question that just managed to sneak in here before we wrap. And my personal question is how to protect that legacy when retiring outside of Canada. And then we've got another one that's not in here. I know Eric does, but do you also offer services in French, en français? Je suis désolé, mais je ne parle français très bien. Et we unfortunately do not offer French services at CPA4IT at this moment in time, other than what I can do in Google Translate. Alliya, I can't speak for yourself. How's your French?
Mine is awful.
Limited. Let's say limited, but limited. But Andrew, I mean, that the person that speaks French, I mean, for the Quebec market, we have an alliance. We created IT360 accounting in Quebec. So if you want to connect with us, it's a French speaking office that we have in Montreal.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also just to speak quickly to the other question about, protecting your legacy when you're retiring outside of Canada. I know that a lot of the tools that we use basically don't care where you're retiring to, and it's building that long-term strategy as far as what that looks like. Is retirement here in Canada? Is retirement, in South America and Asia? It's so important to build that plan with your financial planner so that we can create the appropriate plan for you and make sure it's not only from a protection standpoint, but from a tax efficient standpoint. Again, I'm the carpenter who sees everything as a nail. We want to make sure that we're structuring things tax efficiently if you're going to be leaving Canada. And are you leaving Canada, permanently and giving up your tax status in Canada? That can completely change the strategy and the plan. And I would say this is a really difficult question to answer here in the 3 minutes we have.
But what I will say about that, is I am working, Andrew, with a group across the country that do the arrangement for people that go back to their homeland or that decide to retire elsewhere. But it's very important because obviously in Montreal, we have a lot of French from France, and a lot of them, they want to go back. One guy called us, we have some insurance with the guy and some investment, but he went with another firm with the IPP, and the fund manager that manages the money, when they heard that he was going to France, they said, we can no longer work with you. So we can work depending which country they're going back, but every country has different tax treaty between Canada. So there's no one size fits all.
Yes.
But this is something that we will work on because it's happening on a monthly basis, where an IC says, I'm from France, and in 2-3 years I will retire over there. Oh, okay. So we'll work on that, and we have the team being put together across the country for that, and we will talk about this later on.
Absolutely. And that's, like I
Okay.
said, that's all about being proactive and putting the right plan in place. But this has been an incredible and insightful discussion we've had today. And I want to extend a heartfelt thanks to our esteemed panelists, Eric and Alliya, for sharing their invaluable expertise. And of course, a big thank you to all of you for joining us on this journey towards financial freedom and legacy building. As we just discussed today, the path to financial security isn't just about making money. It's about sort of making informed decisions, from budgeting and investing and asset protection and insurance and tax planning. Each aspect plays a critical role, not just in creating the wealth, but transforming that wealth into a legacy. Into a lasting legacy. So I just want to remind everyone again, our mission is to help you organize your finances, create wealth, and transform wealth into a legacy. And we want to continue to develop content for you guys, and we'd love to hear from you on what would be helpful there. And for those of you who are starting out on your financial planning journey, don't forget to explore some of those resources that we shared with you today. And finally, as one piece of advice I want you to take away from today's discussion is to start now. It's the best time to take control of your financial destiny would have been yesterday, not tomorrow. So the thing to do is to get on that plan and be proactive, start looking forward instead of backwards. So thank you again for joining us, and we hope you found this webinar enlightening and empowering. And please keep an eye on your inbox for any follow-up emails that may include a recording of this webinar and some additional resources and details on future events that we've got coming up. And stay tuned to our website for all the events that we keep hosting every month. For the clients who are on the call, we've also got, I'll just do a specific reminder, on the 21st, we've got our client appreciation event. So if you haven't signed up for that, please do so. We'd love to see you there. Eric and Alliya, of course, you're welcome to join us if you've got time in your schedules to join us for that amazing event.
I might.
We'd love to have you. That invitation is open for both of you guys as well. And we've got just a bunch of thanks coming in across here. Some suggestions. Thank you, guys. Some other questions about how to deal with real estate when you pass away. Again, we'll try and circle back to these. For those of you who didn't get your questions answered today, if you go check out the Facebook post on our Facebook page, I will relay these questions over to my colleague, and I'll make sure that those questions get answered on our Facebook post. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and I wish you an amazing Tuesday. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.